Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and the idea behind my show is really to pay homage to humankind, and I do that through inspirational interviews. I am fascinated by individuals who have accomplished a lot in life, and not so much because of the glitter and glamour, but more so because of the tenacity that they've applied to their life. And the idea generally being to find that zone, to find that blessing that lies within them, that gift that we call it, to make this world a better place. And I personally believe that when we look at the world today, and there's a huge cloud hanging over us because of wars and some terrible things that are happening on our planet that we all share, I think that we should not lose sight of the beauty of this earth and the beauty of humankind and what so many of us have accomplished and many of us are on the road to accomplishing. My son is 18 years old, thank God. He just started university in Toronto, and I'm already seeing him grow as a person within the courses that he's taking, so some of which are very, very fascinating. Others I don't quite understand, but I'm seeing him step up. And I want to share that with you because I want more than every human being to find that zone, to find that place within them that they can grow and that they can be a better person. But not only that, that they can lend to our world, because let's face it, at the end of the day, we're all brothers and sisters. We're all doing this together. And if we can do it in a way which is collective, then I think we have a much greater chance of finding peace. Now, in light of that, I am so deeply honored and so excited to have with me today as my guest, Ted Nolan, who's a former NHL player, former NHL coach, coach of the year, a humanitarian, a philanthropist, a great son, and a beautiful, beautiful husband and father and grandfather, and just a wonderful human being. So, Ted, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. You wrote a book. It's called Ted Nolan, Life in Two Worlds. You can see it up above on Ted's screen. And it's all about your experiences, both growing up on the reserve, starting to play hockey, junior, and then into the NHL, and then ultimately becoming a coach. But I think that even more importantly, it's a book about your life and some of the challenges, many of the challenges that you had to face throughout, which we can call racism or anti-native sentiment. I told you before we started today that when I read your book, I was in tears a lot of the time. And I was, because some of the stories you tell us when you were a youngster at 15 years old and going to rinks in places like Kenora and people yelling at you these awful epithets, these terrible, terrible names that very often got you into tears. And I have to tell you something. I commiserated with you. Like my heart went out to you because you were there on your own and you had to handle things that any 15-year-old should not have to handle. Adults in the stands yelling at you awful things. I'm so sorry for that. I really am. Would you say, though, that because you went through that you are the man today that you are, the strong man making an impact on the world?
No question. I think the way I got raised was a big part of that. And my going up to Kenora the year before, my father just passed away, and he was very stern type of tough man. And I knew for a fact if he was still living, what I was going through in Kenora, he wouldn't have allowed me to do it. He would have brought me home for sure. And so I wrote. We didn't have a phone, so I wrote letters to home, and inside the letters, I guess they could see what what I was writing, and it wasn't the prettiest. And the only thing I remember growing up was to be proud of who I was, and be proud of my heritage, be proud of my people. And here I was in a town on a team that didn't like me for whatever reason. And it was tough. It was tough going to school. It was tough at the rink. So one of them had to give, and I certainly didn't want to leave hockey, let them chase me home. So I quit going to school. I didn't finish grade 10 when I was there. So I stopped going to school, but I continued hockey, and geez, I scored 24 goals, I think. And if you ask me, I mean, this is when I wasn't 2 years old. This is when I was 16 years old,
Yes.
and I don't remember nothing. It's a total blank. So I got a picture that says I won Rookie of the Year on the team, and that's the only thing I can remember. Some of the pictures that remind me of what happened. But it was a extremely tough year.
You know, the part about you leaving school, I think, which was the most compelling, is nobody noticed that you had gone.
Yeah, I think we all go through things for different reasons, and geez, I went. Nobody cared. And at the time, the weed was really just starting to get popular, and drinking, and I hung around with a lot of the older guys from reserve, which were not too far away. And we got hotel rooms every weekend, and I was living like an adult, living in hotel rooms, and not once did the coach ever ask me, he said, how's school going? Not once. And my billets, and their son he's a school teacher now. He was a really good student, and never once did they ask me. So it was
That
just
was
kind
the
of
Thompsons, the Thompson family.
Thompsons, yeah, really sweet family. And Robbie was still played on our team. He's teaching now, I forget, over in Australia or something. But anyways, they just never asked me ever if I went to school. Maybe I got up in the morning and I pretend I was going, but I didn't end up going.
Yeah, and I think the phenomenal juxtaposition between that and what you had where you came from. You come from Garden River Nation Reserve, near Sioux, and I think the St. Mary's River runs right through it. Which my imagery of that must be so beautiful to grow up in an environment like that. But there you had 12 siblings. You were one of 12, I think, the third youngest, and your mom was Rose, God bless her soul, and your father Stan, and it was a really tight family. And here you were going to Kenora, where the authorities, the leadership, the adults weren't really considering your needs.
No, it was really scary. Now I think back of it now, if they say, "Hey Ted, you got to go through this again in order to get through," I probably wouldn't. I just I put my brain somewhere where we all have trauma and we all have issues growing up, and I just put my brain in cruise control, and I walked around like a zombie all year, and got through it. And thank God I did. I still remember telling my brother, though, because two of them came to town. Uh, I thought to watch me play, but obviously they came to bring me home. And I remember telling my brother, I said, if I quit now, next tough situation, I'll probably quit that too. So I didn't want to create a habit for myself of quitting. So I'll stick it out and see what happens. And thankfully I did, because I did make some friends on the team. I won Rookie of the Year, and I came back to Sioux Greyhounds the following year, and I made the team. So if I would have left, they would have said, there goes another quitter. Another guy just couldn't hack it. And I heard these stories my whole life growing up, and I just didn't want to be like that.
Your brother Steve said, quote unquote, he said, "Ted, never quit. Never quit."
Yeah, yeah. He's a big supporter of me for sure. So when I went to Kenora, it was hard. And when I went to minor pro, when I got drafted to the NHL, I mean, I didn't realize. I mean, on the reserve here, where I'm at right now, we haven't got a gymnasium. We haven't got anything. So my legs were really skinny. My arms were wasn't much bigger. And I went to training camp, and all these guys were just monsters. They were and I couldn't keep up. So I remember stealing 2 jerseys. I put them in my bag, and I went to the bus station, hopped the bus home, and thankfully Ted Lindsay who was the general manager and who started the Players Association, saw something that he called me up, and I went back.
Yeah. What did he say to you on the phone? You said years later you thought about that call, and it never happens, such a thing, right?
No, it never happens. If somebody leaves, you just let them go. And I think he saw, I believe he was one of the first gentlemen who started the Players Association. So he understood some of the trials and tribulations some of the players were going through, and he saw what I was going through. And thankfully, that lady you mentioned earlier, Sandra, she came with me. She just turned 17. And can you imagine two lost souls down in Kansas City, Missouri, get an apartment and what have you? So thank God she came, and thank God for Ted Lindsay.
It's a funny story. Sandra ultimately became your wife, and I think you've been together for about 43 years. Is that right?
43, 44 years. We got married in 1980,
Yes.
and we've been together ever since. We dated probably 3 or 4 years before that.
So she gets on the road with you, right? And at some point in time, she says, Ted, like, I'm on my own too much. You got to start coming home early. So your response to her was, listen, if you don't like it, go back home. And she did, right?
She did.
But you didn't lose her.
No, thank God I didn't. Because like I said, I grew up in an environment that and that's why coaching was so important to me when I became a coach. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But when I was a kid, I had no rules. I had no boundaries, no nothing. I could do whatever I want. And here I was with a young lady living down in Kansas City. You guys are going out after practice and having some beers and going to play pool. And she wanted me to come home. And I'm going, no one ever told me to come home in my life. So it was foreign. It was different. And anyway, she left. And thankfully, she came the following year.
I think you described her as one of the prettiest girls you saw, right?
Oh, she was an angel. When I first saw her, there was just one of those. You see it in movies all the time where the sparks start flying. And my mother is really. She was a very strong Ojibwe woman who really believed in who we are as First Nation people and the lineage and the heritage and what have you. And she always wanted me to marry a First Nation girl. And so I dated a couple of white girls, but I never nothing really serious. And so when I met her and I brought her home, my mom kind of rejected her a little bit too because she lived in the city. But then once I told her she was Maliseet, and her sister was a chief out in St. Mary's Reserve for a number of years. So once she found out she was a First Nation woman, everything was great.
Everything was copacetic. Why was it so important for you to marry a First Nations girl?
It was just the way I was raised at the time, because of the residential school, because of the treatment, because of the way we got treated when we went into the city. We just felt we didn't belong, and you couldn't trust. And my mom said, "Don't trust them. Don't ever trust them." And when you're growing up, you're 5, 6 years old, growing up with words like that. My father said, "Don't you ever trust those Juggernaut," she said. So that's why I got raised, and I just really, really strongly believed in what they said, and I looked around when I saw Sandra. I said, "Bingo! It was perfect."
Yeah, you mentioned your mom, Rose, and at some point in time when you were younger, you asked your mother, like your parents would speak Ojibwe within the home, which is similar to what my parents would do, but they spoke Yiddish, not Ojibwe.
Mm.
And you said to your mom, you go, Mom, why didn't we ever learn Ojibwe? And she told these stories about how children had been punished in the residential schools. And Ted, one of the stories was, and it's hard for me to say this, it's very hard for me to say this, but a little girl's tongue was nailed down who had been speaking Ojibwe, right?
To me, that's even a hard thing to bring up and to even imagine. So once she told me that, then I had a little bit more understanding of why she didn't do it because of the didn't want to teach us language. She just did it to us so she could protect. And so I've learned I learned a little bit along the ways, but not as fluent as I'd like to be.
Humankind is bizarre, isn't it? Like, how could you do that to a child?
How could and those are the stories we heard a long time before the Truth and Reconciliation came out. The the Kamloops finding of the babies up in Kamloops, British Columbia. So these are stories we grew up with all the time, growing up in a community, and we sit down, and some of the elders and some of the older guys would talk about when they went to school and what they did and what how it was. So we knew all those stories beforehand, and all of a sudden then it came out, and now the general public are just starting to learn. So that's the type of environment that I grew up with. I didn't grow up in an environment that says, "Hey, Ted, you should work out really hard and get your muscles really strong, and maybe maybe you get drafted." And both my parents, I don't think they watched me play. Maybe my dad watched me play a little bit. My mom never seen me play.
You know, it's incredible to learn more about your family, as I did when I was reading your book. And of course, as I mentioned before, there were 12 children in your family. Have you lost some siblings?
Oh, we lost. That's why it was really hard going through. I lost my father when I was 16, and my mother was tragically killed in a drunk driving accident my first year pro. And then a couple years later, then my brother went, then another brother went, then another sister went. It seemed like it was almost every 2 years somebody was leaving, and that was really hard. And I think that the first ones were extremely hard because they didn't have an understanding of who we were as First Nation people. They just thought you die, you put them in a little can and put them in a cemetery, or you put them in the ground. They don't realize we had a 4-day ceremony to help guide uh,
The spirit.
spirit to the other side. So it was just kind of it was tough. And then I had to leave after 2 days. I'm going, geez, can't they do without me for 2 days? But anyways, that's the way it was.
I was talking to Phil Fontaine, who's the former chief of the Assembly of First Nations. He's become a friend of mine over the years, as has his colleague Penny. In fact, they were the two who set up this interview. So I do want to thank Phil, and I do want to thank Penny for this opportunity. And Phil also comes from a family of 12, I believe. And when I spoke to him, it was probably a month or two ago that we did an interview. He's the last one standing. And
Yes.
I said to him, Phil, what's that like? He said, it's very, very difficult, very hard.
It is hard, and I was very fortunate, and I didn't have a chance to meet Sitting Bull and Tecumseh and all our former really good leaders, but I was very fortunate to meet Phil Fontaine, and I worked with him a couple years when he was the national chief at the assembly, and I tell you, I never met a finer man in my life, and it was an honor to work for him then, and I'm so honored to call him my friend.
And you know what it is that he really likes about you? There's a very cool story that you tell when the Detroit Red Wings called you up, right, from the juniors. And there you were playing your very first game in Chicago. One of my questions, by the way, here is I want to know what you feel about the Chicago Blackhawks shirt with the native picture on it. But what you did was, as you entered, or when you were about to enter the game, you took out a cigarette, you broke it in half, and you put the tobacco on the ground, making it a holy moment. And as you skated on the ice, you had tears in your eyes, and you basically said, this is for all the native kids, those who will have their dreams fulfilled and those who will not. So you made these situations into something holy as a leader of the native community.
Yeah, that was very, very special. And I was thinking about what I went through in hockey, and it had a little wee molecule what our people went through with the residential schools. So I just really wanted to honor them in a way that, because if they didn't fight through what they fought through, we certainly wouldn't be here. So we have a great debt of gratitude to our elders and to the people who went through some of the difficult times that they went through. So when I played that game in Chicago, especially with the Blackhawks, Indian Head in front, and growing up being a Keith Magnuson fan, everybody thought I was a Bobby Hall fan, but Keith Magnuson was the one that inspired me.
What did you think about their shirt?
You know what? It's different. I just really one thing I realized over the last number of years, you hit people with money. They just hate money. They hate losing money, and you know, having an honor night and sweater night, and which is wonderful. But if you can give a certain percentage of that sweater sales into some of our communities that are having a lot of issues with food or substance abuse, I think it can go a long ways.
It's very interesting. You speak about money and subsequently poverty. Your father said, Stan, your father said, always be proud of who you are. And you said that I never knew that we were poor, but you
No,
didn't have electricity and you didn't have plumbing, right?
yeah, I didn't realize we were poor at all because I was playing pro and we are talking about Christmas and how it was. I said, remember we had to go to the band office and we get a big turkey and they give us some canned foods and we had toys in there a little bit. And then one of the guys looked at me and said, what? He
Yeah.
said, you know, Ted, that's for welfare recipients. And I said, really? So anyway, I didn't realize how poor we were. We just made do with what we had, and that's why I am to this day. I mean, my skates, my first pair of skates were size 7 or 8. My feet were size 3. I just put my rubber boots on and made them fit, and that's how it worked. So, you know, people have they could have excuses their whole life, but I just tried to override some of those excuses and just put some good old hard work into it.
A few times when you mentioned that story about the boot, you always continue by saying, you know, the ones with the red soles. Which ones are you talking about?
Oh, they call them, we call them red gummies when we're they're what this big,
Yeah.
maybe just your calf, and they had the red soles on the bottom, and they were black and then red on the bottom, and they used to drop them off on the reserve here quite a few times. So those are boots, and they were supposed to be for the rain season, but we used them all winter.
You know, and you talk about the development of yourself as a youngster, 8, 9 years old in hockey. I know that one of your real passions was baseball, but it made a lot of sense based on the weather that you had in the north to play hockey, and some fascinating stories you told. The one that I was really happy about and excited, and I started to laugh, Ted, was your brother. I think it was Steve, who came out and played hockey, and he took the end of your stick in his nose. Is that right? Started to
Mhm.
bleed. Tell that story. It's a great story.
Oh, geez. Yeah, we on the reserve here. We had back in the day. We had an outdoor rink where everybody went and skated, but it seemed like the adults were always out there. There was no room for us kids. So I made and I use this in a lot of my presentations. It's a metaphor of life. I pumped a pail of water, just a little silver pail. Pump it up, go to the back of the house, dump the pail. Now I think of it, it must have took me forever. And anyways, we made the rink, and one day I hit Steve accidentally in the nose. He started bleeding. He started crying. He was going to run in the house. And I said, wait, make the red line first. And we held his head right across. He drifted all the way across. So, and he was still crying. I said, shh, Mom's going to hear you. So,
I love that story. And the other story I love is that you used to play hockey with your brother, and because you guys couldn't afford enough equipment, you would have your line, you'd get on the ice, and then you'd come off and you'd hand off your helmet and your gloves, maybe your stick or something else, to your brother, and then he would go on, right?
yeah. But we started with recreation hockey in Sault Ste. Marie. That was the first year we went up, but we had everything else. We had the skates, we had the shin pads, and we only had one stick and one helmet, and one pair of gloves. So I'd go for a shift to come back and give him the glove, the stick, and the helmet. And anyways, right at the end of the skate, and I fell down. I still got. I sat in the lobby at least. It seemed like 20 hours, but I sat there a long time, waiting for my ride to get back home, and we had to go stitch my fingers up. But not one adult ever came over and said, you know, give me a Band-Aid or nothing. We just sat there, and when on the way home, my brother said, brother Steve says, we found out that the goaltending equipment was free.
Right.
And he said,
Right.
why don't you be a goalie and I'll be a forward? So that's how I don't know if I would have been a good goalie, but I'm glad he chose to be a goalie.
I think the way you told the story was that a kid actually skated over your fingers, right?
Yes, I fell down at the end. He had all these everybody hopped on the ice for one last lap, and I fell down, and the kid skidded right over my hand. And I got, I think, 3 in this one and 3 in this one. And yeah, we sat in that lobby because we didn't have a car. We got usually we had this family friend. His name was Doc, and Doc, he was a driver, so he'd come by once in a while and pick us up. So we didn't have a car, and that's how even my father pulled me out of hockey one year, and we were playing over in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan later on when I became a bantam or midget, whatever, and I got over there and the coach sat me out. And I said, "You didn't make practice last week." I didn't have a car to get to practice, so and the practice was in the city, so I didn't go. And my father on the way home, he said, "That's it, you're done. You're not playing for them ever again." And I didn't. And I was sitting in the back of the car. I said, "I want to play." They said, "No, you're not playing for them." So we eventually got on a different team. But as far as understanding of where players come from, I think is a part of the coaching regiment that you should learn. You don't just teach kids how to pass a puck and to skate better and to make a move. I always call it. I finally came up with my coaching style because everybody said, "What's your coaching philosophy?" I didn't really know. I just came up with it, and I just said, I think coaching the human spirit is probably the best I could describe it, because I wanted to find out what these players are going through, and no one ever asked me when I had a rough game. They never asked me if I ate that morning. Nobody asked me if my parents fought that day. No one asked me if we just got in late because we didn't have a ride to the rink. No one ever asked me anything. So I really, when I became a coach, I don't think anybody has a bad game purposely. There's something that's going on in their life, and I like to find out. And so I started a real good communication network with all my players, and I just really want to find out about them. Did they miss home? Are their parents coming to the game? When they come to the game, parents don't watch their kid. So I found out when they're coming, so I play the kid a little bit more, because parents are driving up 8 hours.
Nice.
You don't want to sit them there and give regular shift. So we did that. I did that quite a bit.
Well, one of your players said that the key to your coaching, or perhaps I can tell you what your coaching philosophy was. He said that you're a master motivator, and you know how to push buttons to get guys to respond. You have the ability to get guys to go through a wall for you. That's what he said. That was Keith Yandel, who was a Wildcat defenseman at the time, and later was in the NHL, right?
Yeah, Keith.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
No. Keith was a great NHL player. He was from Boston, Massachusetts, and when I started coaching in Moncton, I was sitting down and I kept hearing all these rumors. That's all I heard my whole life, is rumors about why I'm not coaching, rumors about interviews, which never happened. And I was sitting down one night and sitting down with Senator. I should just call the TV station, tell them I'm not coaching. No one's called me, no rumors, no nothing. I've been out for 10 years. Then all of a sudden, Robert Irving from the Moncton Wildcats gave me a call at home. And he asked me to come to Moncton. And one of my first recruits was Keith Yandel.
Yeah.
He was a tough guy to get up there, but thank God we got him, because he won Defenseman of the Year, CHL Defenseman of the Year. Good player, and had a great career.
Well, would you take coaching today over playing if you had the wherewithal to do both?
I'd take coaching in a heartbeat.
You would. Why is that?
I just have to work so hard to compete. I have to try to angle off somebody a little bit better, and I think that's what hopefully made me a better coach. I didn't have the hands to cup the puck. Some of these guys do the Chicago or whatever they do with the puck now. They throw it top shelf. I couldn't do crossovers when I was 19 years old. 19 years old, and I was drafted to the National Hockey League. I couldn't put my left foot over my right foot. And people going, "Come on." I said, "Really?" So a chief from the Rankin Reserve, which is next to ours, they had the Rankin Arena. So I called them up and I said, "Chief, do you mind if I use your rink? I haven't got a whole lot of money." But anyways, he said, "Ted, if you come here at 6 a.m. before anybody else comes, you can get skate for free." So I did the circles. I practiced the circles for just 45 minutes. and I just had to learn how to circle. So now seeing some players, the way that nowadays they don't, because they all have power skating lessons and skill coaches and all that stuff.
I just want to take a step back. We'll probably go back and forth between your playing and coaching because it's all fascinating, the entire story. But when you were called up to the Detroit Red Wings, you get out on the ice, and who should skate by you but Pete Mahovlich? And then who should skate by you again? Rogie Vachon. And you said in your book, I felt like I was a kid playing with grown men, right?
Oh man, oh man! It was you heard of these guys, and all of a sudden somebody just sent me a picture. I did a road hockey for cancer game last week, and she was just a fabulous event. And anyways, a fan came up and said, "Hey, coach, can you sign this?" And he showed me a picture of myself with the Detroit Red Wing uniform on, and Gilbert Perreault skating in the background. And he was my all-time favorite player. So I asked him for it, and he gave me a copy of it. So, to play against those guys and playing against the old Form and Guy Lafleur give me a slash across the top of the because you're pretty well protected. But on top of your skates where the laces are, I'm quite sure it's a little bit better now. That was the vulnerable spot, and that's where he chopped me. And I called my brother. I said, "Guess who's chopped me?"
That's great. I love that.
I didn't want to get him back. He chopped me. So it was good. So playing in all those places, the Montreal Forum, the Chicago Stadium, the old Olympia. I played in the St. Louis Checker Dome. So all the original 6 hockey facilities, I was very fortunate to be able to play.
Well, I was asking myself, what am I going to ask you today? What am I most curious about? And there's a few basic questions. One of them was real simple. What was it like to be in the NHL?
What was it like? Oh, geez. It. I wouldn't say I loved it, because if you when you said you read the book when I was 16 years of age, hockey changed for me psychologically. It came from a place of love. I just grew up loving the game. I like the intricacies of it. I like to put the puck through someone's leg, skate around for them, give them a pass, get me open. I used to love that stuff about the game. And when I went to Kenora, it wasn't so much fun anymore. When you skated by somebody throw an elbow at you or slash you or cross check you and want to fight. I never fought in my life until I went to Kenora. And right from there, it really switched from loving the game to surviving. So I played, but I wish I would have played in a different situation because I didn't really enjoy the things that I should have enjoyed. I should have enjoyed playing in the Olympia. I should have enjoyed playing in the Joe Louis Arena. I should Madison Square Garden. I was one of those guys. I was because of the house that I grew up in. And strangers walking in your house and you're not too sure, and then when they give me a roommate in pro, I didn't know who this guy was, and so I went down to the lobby and I slept in a chair vast majority of the time or I went out and drank a lot and I'd pass out before we got back into the room. So it was just so those are my vivid memories of the thing. I don't remember goals. We won the Calder Cup in the American Hockey League, and we won it. And I think right after the game or next day, we hopped in a car, drove home. So I don't remember winning the cup, even with the NHL Coach of the Year. I knew I wasn't welcomed in Buffalo. You could always sense when people don't like you. And so I went to the award, got the award, and then right after the ceremony that night, my wife and I hopped in the car and we went home. Went back to Stevens because Brandon was graduating grade 8 the next morning. So we probably would have left anyways. But those are type of things that I didn't enjoy it the way I should have.
I'm deeply saddened by that. I really am. I'm sorry for you because my premise was I'm a Canadian boy. I was born in Kitchener, Ontario, and we used to go out and play at Victoria Park when it must have been 30 below zero. We come back, icicles dripping off of us. And, we Saturday night, I'd sit and watch Hockey Night in Canada. You can see I'm wearing my Leaf shirt. I did that in honor of you, although you weren't a Leafs player. But I thought, oh my gosh, as a kid, you think anybody who rises up in those ranks, NHL players are like royalty in this country, right? But that was not your experience.
That was not even close. Not even close. I I wish I would have, because there were so many events. There's golfing tournaments. There's alumni situations going on, and I never really joined. I just started with the Buffalo Sabres. So I'm going to do 2 alumni things with them, but I just never. And no one ever called. To tell you the truth, no one's ever called. Hey Ted, would you like to go? So somebody did an article this a few weeks ago. The forgotten penguin. So I play with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But the greatest thing ever. When I was out of the game for 10 years, and I was in the Toronto airport going down where I forget where we're going, and this young First Nation girl, she had been 10, 12 years old. She come running up to me and said, "Hey, coach, can you sign this?" Then she said, "I know why you're not coaching, because your skin is too brown." So she was, 12 years old. And anyways, fast forward, 8 years later, I'm coaching New York Islanders, and Aaron Asham is one of our players, and it's a relative of his. And anyways, she was a young lady then, 19, 20 years old, and I went over to introduce myself to the family. Said, "I know why you're coaching," and she touched my cheeks. It was the same girl. Beautiful. Yeah, so I was really blessed and lucky to. I had the biggest support system in the world. Our First Nation community really supported, and they helped, and that's what helped me get through.
Well, they're so incredibly proud of you, aren't they?
Yeah, I did. I don't know about proud. It's just that I didn't forget where I was from. I'm talking to you from the Garden River First Nation up here in Northern Ontario. My family's still here. I still got my house here. So I just love it being home, and I love being around our people, and it's just my comfort zone.
Tell me, some of your brothers many years ago, they wrote on the side of the bridge entering into your reserve, "This is native land." And the authorities come and they erase it, and your brothers attach themselves to the bridge with their belt, and they wrote it again.
Yeah.
Is it still up there? Is that still up there on the bridge?
It's still there. It's a famous, anybody who's listening to the podcast could Google the Garden River Bridge, and it says, "This is Indian land."
Yeah.
And anyways, they're all bummed up one night. They got up, a number of them, and they did it with belts. Yeah. They were hanging over the bridge. I mean, it's pretty scary. Yeah, so they did it with their belts, and then railroad company came down and spray painted it all over again. They did it again. They spray painted. Then the third time, they just let it be. So it's been when Jordan won the Stanley Cup, we're pretty lucky to bring it home. We had a sunrise ceremony at the graveyard, and my father's name was Stan, so we brought the Stanley Cup down to the graveyard, and we had a ceremony there. Then we brought the cup to the Garden River Bridge, and all the people came by. It was a wonderful, wonderful day.
The notables from Garden River are listed online, and Jordan, your son, is one of them. Shingwakanzi, hereditary chief, a warrior of 1812, who was involved in capturing a Fort Michilimackinac, was mentioned. Ted Nolan, yourself, is mentioned, and Brandon Nolan is mentioned as well. So it's the three of you. And then there's Darren Sack. Do you know who Darren Sack is?
Oh, I know. Darren's my cousin. So I know Darren very, very well. We kind of grew up, and that's why I love baseball. But yeah. I should say I like baseball. I like softball, yes. The Whitmer. Yeah. And anyways, we had a team in the city, and we'd go up and we'd lose 10-8 or 11-6. We could always hit the ball, but we didn't have a pitcher to stop the other team. And all of a sudden, Darren started practicing, and Darren started getting really good. I think he's in the World Fastball.
That's correct. And he was inducted into the International Softball Congress Hall of Fame. That's right.
Oh, he was good. My younger brother Steve was his catcher, and so I think we closed down. Maybe the city won't admit it, but I think we helped close the city down, because the league down, because they couldn't hit him. He was just so good, and we had a lot of fun with that run. And all of a sudden, he got really good. Then he got recognized and went over to New Zealand and different parts of the world to pitch.
Let's see what you know about your hometown, your reserve. Who's the chief there?
Right now, Karen Bell.
Right. Correct. Um, Under what treaty does the reserve exist?
Robertson Huron Treaty,
Very
established in
good. You know your history.
yeah,
When was it established? Sorry.
1880, 1882, I believe.
Okay, I don't have that, but I
1800s,
trust you. I trust you.
yeah.
What's the land area? That's a tough one.
The Northern Anishinaabeg, uh, Robinson Huron Treaty Territory of the Anishinaabeg, and Robinson Huron Treaty Territory up in Northern Ontario.
Right. Very good. I find that many natives whom I've dealt with, and I have because I launched a nonprofit of my own a number of years ago, a Jewish humanitarian organization. And at some point, we started up the Jewish Native Department. And we did some phenomenal work up in Kenora, here in Toronto, training teachers how to teach about the residential schools and so on. And I was deeply honored to be part of that. And what I found was that natives are very, very, by and large, not always, but very aware of, very educated, or First Nations on their history, as you are. Was that part of your growing up years? Was it important for you to understand the roots of who you are as a Native Canadian?
No, no question. Because we went to, I was very fortunate. I grew up on a powwow trail. We went to powwows all summer long. We went up to Saskatchewan. We went down to the United States, all over the states. We had ceremonial gatherings here. We had the AIM movement back in time, the American Indian movement, and all those. And my mother was like a house hand, and all the guys would pop up their tents, and they were just fascinating how they fought for our rights, and I think that's really had a profound impact on me as a player. I mean, if they could go to jail and they could do all the stuff to fight for my rights, I certainly have a right to believe in myself as an Anishinaabe and not to quit and not to go home. So I think the best way to honor someone and pay homage to them is to fight for your rights. So I've been very proud of Anishinaabe for my entire life, and I'll die one.
You mentioned before that so much was put on you as a First Nations person, so much racism that you had to experience. Phil Esposito, however, said at some point that decisions that you made, he said that you were your own worst enemy. And reading the book, there are parts of the book where you'll actually become very introspective. And you'll say, you know what, maybe I should have taken that second year in Buffalo. The Sabres came to you after you won the Coach of the Year. They want to extend your contract by one single year. And you said, no, I'm not doing that. You were insulted. Do you think that you should have played things differently?
Now I think back that I should have. Now I had a lot of chance to reflect and say, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't change a thing in my entire life. I mean, I did it. I mean, you don't. Someone doesn't win Coach of the Year and offer them the same kind of contract without actually talking to them. And I still remember telling the GM at the time. I said, back in the day, that's how we lost a lot of our rights. We signed these treaties that we didn't understand. We didn't quite understand what we were giving up. I could read, so when I see the contract, it's the same money that I made last year. It was a 1-year deal. So I rejected it. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably do the same thing.
Yeah, it seems like throughout your career, you were hanging out with some buddies when you were in the juniors, I believe. You were making $17,000, and these guys were making 2-3 times as much as you, right?
Yeah, when I got drafted to pro hockey, I didn't realize they had a draft. I just thought people were good and they get invited to the camp like every other sport organization, but I didn't know they had a draft. And sitting at home one day and I heard on the radio that I just got drafted by the Detroit Red Wings, and I'm going. I didn't want to get too excited because things weren't exciting back home. When you lose your father and things are tough. You didn't want to. So I went for a ride in the car and I jumped around a little bit and hooted and hollered. And then I'm going, man, oh man. So this guy called me up and said, I can be your agent. And I said, what's an agent? so I'll get your. So he did and he said, I got you 17.5 and I got you I don't know what it was, $5,000 signing bonus or something like that. And said, sounds good to me. And that was it. And so anyways, when I was playing pro, then I talked to my colleagues that were same age as I was. They were making 35. They were making 40. They were making 50. I'm going 17. So anyways, I did my own the next year, and I jumped up to 21.
Oh,
So
good.
and I didn't have to pay them 5% or whatever they were charging at the time. So basically, I did my own contracts from that point on.
And when you became a coach within the NHL, and you did a few times, you were asked by the Islanders to coach. You were probably making a nice chunk of change, weren't you?
Yeah, I was making good money in at the time in Buffalo. I was making, I don't know, 250, 350, something like that,
Yeah.
which was a lot of money even to this day. It's a lot of money. The Islanders, and you know what? It's funny when I did those contracts, I didn't care what they paid. You pay me what you pay everybody else, and I just thought that's the way life worked. But it doesn't work that way. So, anyways, I learned to make do, and so contract wise, I've never coached or played the game because of money. I did it 1 year my entire life, and it was probably the worst mistake I ever made.
But when you got that contract, 250,000, 300,000, did your mind go back to your days on the reserve when you would put your boot inside of your skate? Like, do you always go back to, you know what, this is where I came from?
This when my first thing. I still remember talking to my mom when I was 16 years of age. I said, "Mom, I like to live where Uncle Jack lives, and he lives on the water." And so he gave me I was working construction at the time. He charged me $100, and I got 2-3 acres of waterfront property.
Yes.
And when I got the Buffalo job, I was able to have enough money to build a house. But on the reserve at the time, it's getting a little bit better. You couldn't get a mortgage. They wouldn't.
You couldn't own land, right? Yeah.
You can own land, but they don't give you a mortgage. So I worked out a deal with a great builder in Sault Ste. Marie, and I said I could pay you in chunks. I'll pay you 50 for the first little bit, and then 50, and then 50, and it cost me, I think, $250,000. I spent all my money building that house, but this is where we are right now, and the kids will have it when I'm gone.
How is it for you to be in your own house that you built?
Oh, I love home, but my wife and I are having little disputes on where we should live, and because my son he got drafted by the Oshawa Generals,
Yeah.
and he lives in Whitby, Ontario. He hasn't come home since. And my other son lives in Windsor, Ontario, and they haven't come home since. So we got a little place in a little town called St. David's, near Niagara Lake. We got a little one of those turnkey operation ones. We go in there, spend a couple of, but we're all coming home this Christmas, which will be great.
So who's going to be there?
Brandon's going to be there with his 3 kids and his wife, and Jordan's going to be there with his 2 girls. So it's going to be, it'll be fun. I'll make a rink in the backyard. Take the girls. I got to be careful when the 2 older boys want to go rabbit hunting, and my youngest niece, granddaughter, found out that I was take the boys. Said, "Papa, you're not going to shoot those rabbits, are you?" No. So I'll take them rabbit hunting, and when they're up, so we'll just have a good old traditional Christmas.
Right, but you're not a great hunter. You actually said that about yourself, right?
No, I'm not a great hunter. It's we used to, when kids talk about there's nothing to do. I mean that drives me up the wall. There's all kinds of things to do, and when we were kids, we grab our guns. Take a couple potatoes with us just in case, and we go live off the land.
Right.
And we get squirrels or whatever. We'd fish, and we caught a salmon or we caught a sucker, just an ugly fish. So anyway, we caught it up and we cut it open and had a bunch of eggs in there. And then one of my friends says, "It's like caviar." I said, "What the heck's caviar?" So it's what the rich people eat. So
you spit it out. Ted, you spit it out, right?
Oh, geez, it was awful.
Caviar is terrible. It's terrible. I know. Listen, I've always I've been struck by your tremendous sense of humanity. In your book, you mentioned a number of people who played a significant role in your lives, and I want to touch on a couple of them because I think it's really important. There's a saying in Judaism to be makir tov, to recognize who did good to you throughout your life. And it's really important. So I always tell people, when you tell me a story, tell me the names of the people who were in it who treated you well. But there was a video of you getting off a bus, I think when you first, or one of the first times you were coaching for the Islanders. And it was a video of you talking to the bus driver. And you guys were laughing together. And why that struck me was, I actually wrote a note down about it, is because I find that people who treat everybody the same, whether they're a clerk at a supermarket or the bus driver driving 3, 4, 5, 6 hours to get your team somewhere, and they recognize they're not invisible to them. To me, that's a beautiful, beautiful representation of humanity. Now, a couple of people you said were so kind to you throughout your lives, 2 people, Mrs. Forbes and Mrs. Payette.
Yeah, they were my, I think, grade 4 teacher, and she was just wonderful. She was really nice and talked to me all the time and didn't yell at me. And Mrs. Payette was the librarian, and every Friday she'd ask me to go to the library with her to help carry the books out to the car. And so they were just wonderful. They're just out of all the teachers I went through, those are 2 that really stuck out. I had a couple of older ones in grade 10 and what had to have you, but no, Miss Payette, Miss Forbes were wonderful.
You said in the book that Bill Leclerc changed your life. How so?
Well, Bill was he owned concrete cement company in the city, and he was our general manager of our local Bantam team. And I believe he was a good friend of Jim McCauley, who owned the Sioux Greyhounds. Because I'm going, how does a kid basically come out of house league hockey and all of a sudden get a tryout with the Sioux Greyhounds? That doesn't happen too often. And here I was trying out, and Bill talked to me about. We drove down to a little town here and have dinner once in a while, and he'd show me what an appetizer was. I didn't know what appetizers were, and he showed me where the forks and all that stuff was, and he gave me a job. He gave me a job with this construction company in the summertime. Then he told me something that really. He said, "Ted, you got to really change your lifestyle. I know you like to have a good time, but if you concentrate, you could play in the National Hockey League one day." I said, "Me?" So, anyways, I took him to heart, and I quit going out with my friends. I changed my life a little bit, not a lot, but a lot enough to make a difference. But he was, and Jim McCauley was. Then he owned the Greyhounds the following year. He bought me my first suit because you have to wear a suit. Wearing the Sioux Greyhounds. I wore that suit for 2 years.
Did you?
That was the only suit I had. But those 2 gentlemen were godsends for sure.
What did the suit look like? Do you remember?
The Sioux, we had a couple movie theaters downtown. We had a restaurant. Mary's Lunch was one of my favorite places to go into. And I still remember seeing the movie Billy Jack.
Yes.
And we walked out and we had our fists up in the air holding our hand. It was a fictional character, but that was the first movie that we really had someone that was similar to us. And so Sault Ste. Marie they had a Dairy Queen downtown right beside the gardens where everybody parked and had a good old time. And it was a booming city at the time.
So when you were writing the book, you clearly remembered the very difficult times, but you also remember a lot of the good folk, a lot of the good people who were there for you, right?
Oh, there was nobody does it by doing what you do, and you survive and see what happens at the end. You always have some people in your life that mean a lot. And when Bill told me that about working out, I didn't know what working out was. So I started running railroad tracks. I started. I couldn't run it in daytime because all my friends were saying, "What are you running for?" And I tell them, they'd start laughing. I said, "You ain't gonna make it." So, anyways, I ran at nighttime. I ran in railroad tracks. I ran up to the woods. I chopped down a tree. That was my fitness. I tell the kids everywhere I go. I mean, I didn't have a gym. I just ran up this big hill, about a mile hill. I'd sprint up top and grab a tree and chop it down and lift it up a little bit, and I come back down and I walk back on the railroad tracks.
Wow.
And I'd hit every tie because I heard people talk about you have to have quick feet and balance. So I hit the railroad ties on the way back for about a mile, and then I walk along the beam on the way back. And I jump from side to side because once in a while you tip over. So that's where I worked out. And a local guy in the community, he was a bodybuilder, and he helped me. My brother was a pro boxer. So that's the training that I received when I was a kid.
Do you remember running on the tracks at night?
Yes, no, not so much the tracks at night. I ran when I could see them. First thing in the morning, or last thing at just before it got dark. But I ran the tracks because the tracks, if you ever walk down railroad tracks, the ties are this far apart, then they're this far apart, that far apart. It varies. So I just hit every tie going through.
Wow.
And I have quick feet, and then I walk back on a balance beam or on a railroad to get balance.
Now, would Rose and Stan, your parents, would they know you were doing this?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't tell anybody what I was,
Why wouldn't you tell anyone?
because the only thing I hear was you're not going to make it anyways.
Okay.
They won't let you play. They won't let you play. So I believed I could, and I worked out quietly. Like I said, my parents put me in sports not to play on TV. They put me in sports to make some friends and to learn how to work with people. And that's why I think sports is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But sometimes parents get in that feeling that their kid is going to be the next one, which is there's so many next ones out there. But the biggest thing is just have fun.
Have you always been this disciplined? Are you still like that?
I really am. I really am. Because my wife used to love when training camp was 6 weeks away, because that's when I would shut down everything. I wouldn't go out so much anymore. I'd get up and go to the gym. I would concentrate on my craft because when they kept telling me I wasn't strong enough, I'm going, how strong do you have to be? I still remember going to training camp at Detroit, and they had this 200-pound weight. And you have to lift it up 10 times or whatever. I got it up once. It came down. It didn't go back up. And a couple guys were laughing.
Yeah, they were laughing at you, right?
Laughing at me. And I'm going, one thing about that weight, it doesn't hit back. I do. So I had to be a little bit crazy. And it worked for me.
There were a few times in the book where you talked about how people were trying to humiliate you. One was where an entire group of 300 fans, many adults, were pretending they were, with their stick, they were imitating you, and as if it was a tomahawk. And other times where players on your own team would just come over and just spear you and so on. Did you lose your temper then, or are you better with your temper now?
I had to work on it. I had to work on. I went through mental health coaching and therapy because I let the game get to me one time in my life that I said, how can I be this good at what I do, and then all of a sudden you can't get it. I mean, if people are believing this, they have no truth to it whatsoever. So anyways, I said that's what they believe, and then I'm going to go back to reserve. And I left my wife for 2 years. I left my kids. I came back to reserve, and I lived it up good. Not good, but I was lost for a couple of years. But the one thing about Sandra, she never gave up on me, and so we reconciled and got things going. And my boys, I kept close enough to the boys. I kept seeing them every once in a while, but no, thank God she didn't give up on me like a lot of people did, and she didn't. So we're still together.
Was the door open when you wanted to come back?
Not right away. I had to work on it a little bit, and she came up, and my niece was killed by a drunk driver on the community. Lost the mom, the dad, the two sisters, and one daughter survived. And Sandra came up for the funeral, and that's kind of the one that kind of got us back together a little bit. And so, like I said, I've changed it a little bit. I think one thing about age, it changes everybody. And I didn't put hockey as the number one thing in my life anymore. I knew I was good at it. And it was a lot of fun to do it. Can I still coach? I believe I could. I mean, this is really not hard. You just got to score one more goal than the opposition. That's all you got to do, and you win. Not 10 goals, not 15 goals, just one. So anyway, I believe I could. Will I ever get a chance? Probably never will. But I'm good with that now.
As I discussed before with you, we talked a bit about the beautiful women in your life, and one of them is was your mother, Rose. Last couple of years, you have a foundation, and the last couple of years, you actually started up something in your mom's honor to help kids out. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I was going through my very difficult dark period, I was sitting around by the water and what have you, and I went to see the movie Muhammad Ali story, and it kind of resonated with me a little bit, and how people take things away, and it didn't seem to affect him. Yet I let hockey affect me. So I called up a couple of friends of mine, and I said I got an idea to raise some money, and they said, "What for?" I didn't tell them. They thought maybe it was for sports, what have you. And so we met here in Sault Ste. Marie, and we started the Ted Nolan golf tournament.
Yeah.
And we raised a little bit of money. And then a good friend of mine, Ray Martin, who passed on, he's in the spirit world. If it wasn't for him, he showed me how to open a foundation. So we opened up Ted Nolan Foundation in 2012. And I think I'm very honored to say that we raised close to $2 to $3 million on educational endeavors for First Nation women across the country.
Ah, good for you, my friend. Good for you. Did any NHL hockey players come out to your golf tournament?
Yeah, Joe Thornton came. I didn't invite because you had to pay for their flights, and
Oh, do you? Do you?
I had to pay for all that stuff, so I didn't want to. But Joe Thornton showed up every year. A couple of entertainers showed up. Susan Gluckart's a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
She came every year. Donnie Burnstick, he's a native comedian. He came every year to help out. So we just had a. But it got so big, we sold out 18 teams overnight. Then the next year we said, geez, we got to get another foursome. So we got another 18 teams on the same golf course, and there's still people on the waiting list. So we went to another golf course. We opened up two more. We had something like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different courses going on at the same time. We raised all this money down in London, Ontario.
But you don't golf.
I'm not much of a golfer.
So what did you do out there?
I pretend I was a golfer. The one good thing about foursomes, you could go with 3 other people you hope that are pretty good.
Yeah.
You just go with their ball and hit. I could golf half decent. I think I'm in the 90s, I guess.
Are you still strong? I know you went through a bout of cancer, but are you physically strong?
Yeah. I feel strong. Yeah, I feel. Yeah, I started doing our hockey schools again,
Yeah.
which I did up in Calgary last week, or up in Saskatoon last week, and it was wonderful.
How were you out there?
You know what? The first one was kind of a little shaky.
Yeah.
Your legs, because I didn't skate for like 2.5 years, and your legs muscles are not what they used to be, and skating muscles are a lot different from running muscles.
Yeah.
And so it took me a little while. It took me maybe one session, but we're on the ice for 6 hours a day. So by the third day, I was back to normal. So now I'm back to normal.
And you were on the ice with your boys.
Yeah, my 2 boys. Yeah, Brandon and Jordan.
What's that like for you, Ted, when you're out there with your boys?
That was probably the best feeling I ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And I tell this to everybody. You know, I was very lucky and very fortunate to do certain things in my life and fought through some obstacles and what have you. But being a father is probably the greatest thing in the world.
Yes.
And so the day that Brandon was born, I really changed my life. I changed my life a little bit, and I said, you know, I don't want him seeing what I saw when I was growing up. So we had no more booze in the house. And Brandon turned out to be a pretty good student and a young man, and Jordan the same thing. So, ever since when I had those guys, they changed my life completely.
Well, what is it about being a father that you love so much?
It's not about you anymore. It's not about you. It's not about how do I feel. It's about that little 8-year-old who maybe got picked on at school in the day, and how are you going to talk to him about or her how they're going to deal with that situation next day. And you can say, well, you hit them right back, because that's not a good thing to do. But you got to kind of put it in your mind that some kids have bad kids or bad experiences in their life. Maybe they're acting out somehow, and maybe they'll be a whole lot different here today than they were last week. So you just a lot of communication. So my wife's always been a stay-home mom, and so she we're quite involved with our kids' education. We drove them to school my wife drove them to school every day. We went to, I think, eight different schools time in grade 9, or 6 different schools.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of moving around for them, and but they hung in there.
Were you a disciplinarian?
I thought I was, but my wife's more of the disciplinarian stuff. I was beaten a couple of times when I was a kid, and the one thing I told my wife, I'll never ever hit my children.
Yeah.
So maybe she hit them with a spoon once in a while, but I've never disciplined my kids that way in my entire life.
You know what was very interesting to me as well was you had a certain awareness as a youngster that I did not have. I remember there's a story that you told about going down and your uncle, was it Uncle Jack, was an
Mhm.
alcoholic, and he'd just been on a binge for a couple months, and your mom, God bless her soul, Rose, took you down to where he lived, and you held his arms because he was sort of violently thrashing about. You walked out of the house and you said, I'm never going to do that."
Yeah, like I said, a lot of our people our forefathers before us, they went through some
Yeah.
traumatic times, and how they dealt with it was, a lot of it was in the bottle, a lot of it was in drugs, and so anyways, I went down, and my uncle John, not Jack, it was my uncle John that he went through the DTS and shakes and vomiting. He had nothing in his stomach, so I just remember holding his. And I walked out of there. I said, "This ain't never going to happen to me."
At 8 years old.
8 years old. So you just have little vivid memories. I mean, when I went into the city to get a haircut, and the guy put a bowl on my head, I knew it was wrong, but what am I going to say? What are you doing? So he cut around my head. My mom came in the shop. She was just horrified.
Uh,
Uh, Cheers, but I just said, let's just leave. So
have you worked this stuff through?
I didn't. I put a lot of stuff I went through right behind a wall. I just closed it off and didn't think about it anymore. And I did that the vast majority of my life
Yeah.
until when I got let go by the buffalo. It all comes crashing down. Like eventually it'll come crashing down, and it came down hard. So I had to get some professional help and to deal with some of the things that I dealt with when I was growing up and how to deal with it, um, and didn't realize that that's not normal. And so, anyways, I dealt with it professionally, and which was the best decision I ever made in my life.
You're a wonderful role model, Ted.
Oh well, thanks.
Oh, you are. I can't wait for my son. So just a few general questions, and then I have a poem to read about you.
Okay.
Yeah. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Perfect happiness. When I'm with my 2 boys and we do the presentations to, I didn't raise my 2 boys to grow up to be hockey players. I raised them to be good citizens, and whatever they choose in life, whether they want to be a carpenter, whether they want to be a school teacher, whether they want to be a painter, I didn't really care, as long as they're contributing people to society and be a good human being. And I was just lucky enough that they both liked hockey, and they both succeeded. But just being a good person, I mean, that's to me is the number one thing. You can have all kinds of money, you can have all kinds of, but if you haven't got friends and family, you haven't got nothing.
What's your greatest fear?
Uh, Greatest fear? Uh, Nothing now. I guess greatest fear would be leaving this planet too soon, because I feel I got a little bit more work to do.
What is the trait you love most about yourself?
I guess perseverance. Just don't give up. I mean, one of the easiest things I told this to my brother a number of times. One of the easiest things people do in life is to quit. I mean, that's easy. Anybody can quit. But when you got to persevere through certain things, and when you get rejected again, then you just keep going and keep going and keep going. And it comes to a point where, you know what, you know that you're good enough to play. And if somebody else doesn't see it, then hey, that's their problem. But don't give up on yourself.
Is that how you are with the kids that you teach nowadays?
Yeah, I just be as true to yourself as you possibly can. And if somebody doesn't like you, that's their problem. That's not yours.
Ted, what do you do with the kids on the ice, who you can just see are struggling so badly, be it skating or emotionally? How do you deal with those kids today?
Yeah, you know what? The best thing about our camp is exactly that. We have some kids that are handicapped,
Yes.
or that are
Oh,
out there skating, and they have a pusher, and the best thing you could teach kids, that's why I have a little bit of an issue with separation, like the AAA and advanced and all this stuff, and going. Kids have to learn empathy. They have to learn how to care about a human being, and so when we're at these camps, I mean, the kids kind of bang their sticks and wait for the kid to score. It takes a couple of minutes, but at least when he scores, everybody's banging their stick and we go. And I think that's the biggest lesson we could teach anybody.
can you tell me one story about hockey camp?
Actually, we went one place, and we seen these three girls jump on the ice, and they had sticks. They had ringette sticks,
Mhm.
and they had ringettes, and it was a hockey camp. So we positioned every drill we did as a kid would do it with a puck, and would do it with a puck, and a girl would do it with a ringette, and she would do it, and then two pucks, and then one thing. So we just included. We
Yeah.
didn't exclude. We just. I mean, we had young girls. There was two. There's a story of two young girls playing in Kyla and geez, I forget Jordan. They're playing in Rochester NCAA. And we went to their reserve when they were 12, 13, and they're really good players, and they're both going to quit because the coach, they didn't like the coach very much. I said, coaches come and go. Just
Yeah.
let it in this year, right out the other year, and just play. Anyways, they went back the following year. Now they're graduating this year out of RIT, out of Rochester, New York.
Wonderful.
And so you see a little bit of progress being made. And we have the first recipient. We had the Rose Nolan scholarship. She's a medical doctor in North Bay, Ontario.
Ah,
So there's some wonderful, wonderful stories that are happening of it, and so I'm very thankful.
are your boys' level of empathy where you would want it to be?
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. Because Jordan, he won 3 Stanley Cups.
I
mean,
know.
you see all these other kids on TV going, yeah, I won this, but hockey is the same thing to them as it was to me. It's just something that we did. It's not who we are. Uh, Brandon was probably the one that loved hockey the most of all three of us. And unfortunately, he had suffered a severe head injury when he was only 25, 26 years old. And Jordan played until he's 31 years old. So they both played, but I would say they have a really soft spot for kids.
Wonderful. I've been playing around with artificial intelligence. Are you into AI at all?
I'm just learning about it.
Okay, good for you because you got to.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that I've been doing with my guests is asking AI to write a poem about them. So today, before the show, I had AI indeed do that for you, Ted Nolan. And here's the poem. You ready?
Right.
Okay. It's called Ode to Ted Nolan. Good title, eh? In the north where the wild winds blow, a spirit rises strong and slow. Ted Nolan, an Ojibwe heart, a journey mapped in skill and art. From the reserve where dreams took flight, he chased the puck through endless night. With grit and grace, he found his way to the NHL, where he would play. A player's heart, a coach's mind, in every challenge, hope he'd find, yet shadows lingered, whispers cold. In a game that's fierce, his story is told. Life in Two Worlds he penned with pride, a testament to those who've cried. For justice, love, a brighter day, in every loss he'd find a way. Squeezed out, he felt the bitter sting, yet still he rose, a champion's ring. With wisdom deep and courage bold, he forged the path for young and old. For every child with dreams to chase, Ted's legacy a warm embrace, a voice for those who dare to dream. In every struggle, hope seem. Ojibwe pride, a story sung, in every heart his anthem strum. Through ice and fire, he'll always stand, a beacon bright for all the land.
Wow. That was that was powerful. That was good. And AI did it.
AI.
Wow. Yeah, because I was doing the book. We did it for maybe 3-4 months, And then they sent us a copy. We read it, and my wife looks at it and says, "Ted, there's nothing in there.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there. You gotta dig deep a little bit. And you gotta. I mean, some stories you don't want to tell. I imagine." So we went back and we rewrote the whole thing. So, but it's like the AI. I mean, it's just it tells. You got to tell the truth. I think in order to get where you want to get to.
Why didn't you tell the truth first time around in the book?
Because I lived a quiet, reserved upbringing. I told everybody my family was the wonderfulest thing in the world. We grew up on reserve. We went to powwows all the time. We had ceremony all the time. We went hunting. We went fishing. We had family gatherings at our house all the time. It was the best thing ever happened to me in my entire life. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. And then I talked to my sister, and she remembers the all night parties, the fist fights in our living room, people staying over for 3 or 4 days, drunken skunks. So it wasn't quite like I portrayed it to be. And that's why my wife said to me, said, "Ted, that's not the way we got raised. That's not the way you got raised." And said, "You're right." So we went back and wrote a little bit deeper. I think I could have went a lot more deeper. There's one kid. He turned to me when I was coaching junior hockey. He turned to me. I mean, can you imagine a 19-year-old kid with his coach says, "F you, you stinking Indian,
Right.
you effing drunk."
Like,
And I'm going, "What?" So, anyways, then all the players kind of looked at me. So, what am I going to do? And so I talked to him after the next day when the emotions ran out. I said, you can't say things like that to people who are different from you. I said, how would you feel if somebody talked to you about your heritage and your? So I had a long conversation with him. And anyways, fast forward on coaching the Buffalo Sabres, and the second time he called me up. He said, "Ted, I want to first of all I want to apologize for what I said, and I want you to meet my son." So he came down and said hello, and we met his son. And anyways, I was going to put that part in the book. And I asked him, and he was the only one that said no.
he said no.
He said no because he was still working in the National Hockey League.
You know, you should live a long life. In Judaism, we say you should live till 120. And when you get to that day, how would you like to be remembered?
I like to be remembered that I never wanted anybody to feel sorry for me. I worked with what I had and what the Creator gave us, and I was very thankful for what we had. I was, even though that wood stove went out in the wintertime, it was still a home. We still had a home. Even though that fridge was empty a few times, it was full majority of the times. Even though there's a lot of drinking and a lot of partying going on, there were some really good times too. So I always chose to look at the good side of everything that happened in my life. And I think sometimes people get caught up into poor me, which I did when I got let go by the Buffalo Sabres. That was the first time in my entire life that I let the job get into my psyche. And I'm going, what the heck am I doing? And I just kind of snapped out of it and doing it. It's not my problem that the league doesn't want me to coach. That's their problem. It's not mine. So I just revamped. So I don't know, just be a good person and things will find out. And maybe some people don't agree with it. That's okay, as long as you're okay with it.
Are you blessed?
I feel I am. I feel I'm very, very blessed. I got a whole bunch of people upstairs looking down on me all the time and helping me out. When Chris Simon committed suicide there not too long ago, and I did his eulogy, and I went out to the water. I live on the water, and there's a fishing lure that washed up on shore. It was about maybe a foot inside the water. So I picked it up, and I knew it was a sign from him. And I said, I'm okay now. So you just have to have faith that there's a better place for waiting for each and every one of us. Yes. And I want to get there, but not yet. But so, anyways, just be a good person.
Yeah, and just to cap off the interview, I I think one of the most prolific things you said in your book was a fellow dropped off the Jack Adams Award for best coach of the year at your house.
Yeah.
You kicked it down the stairs because you were so upset. And then you said sometime later you realized it wasn't that trophy, which was in shambles. You were upset that you weren't with the Sabres and they didn't want to re-sign you or sign you for long enough. And you said, but the greatest gift I ever got was not that. The greatest gift I ever got was the headdress, was the native headdress.
Oh, I got it. That headdress. I was only 23 years of age. I went up to the Blackfoot people up in Pagan Reserve, and they had the biggest powwow I've ever seen in my entire life. And at the time, they had an old man, old woman as their elders, and they came out and they presented the eagle headdress to me. They put the war paint on, and it was all in Blackfoot language. I tell you, it was fabulous. So I still got that trophy downstairs. I at least took it out of the box. It was a little bit banged up a little bit, so at least it's sitting on a shelf down in the closet. But maybe one day I'll get it out. But that hockey was never who I am. It's much deeper than that.
Well, you're a very authentic man. You're a very honest man, and I would say that you're a fine First Nations leader. But I would take it even further than that. You're a wonderful Canadian leader, and I thank you so much for that, because what I learned from you through the book and through this interview is to be stalwart, is to be strong, is to work really, really hard and to be disciplined. And despite the stuff you go through, and we all do, we all go through stuff, you stayed in the game. And thank God, I look at you today and you look so healthy and you project such happiness. And I'm just delighted for you. And I thank you for sharing that with us. I really do.
Well, thank you very, very much for having me on, because like I said, after everything is said and done, the only person you got is yourself.
Yes.
And how you going to deal with that? You can't blame people forever. You just got to learn to move on and to accept certain situations that happen in your life. And I learned to accept. I know our people went through some very, very difficult times, but next generation hopefully make those times better.
Yeah, amen on that. Amen on that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. What I always do at the end of my interviews is I sort of create a synopsis of sorts as to what I think you can take out of this interview. And to me, there's a whole plethora of different quotes and ideas and stories that Ted shared with us. But mostly it's the idea that, you have to be yourself and you got to work really, really hard to pursue your dreams. And when you have both of those things, there's a really good likelihood that you will attain success, of which it's very clear that Ted has, despite, again, some of the most difficult things that he's gone through. So find your zone, find the gift that lies inside of you, and really, really focus on it. Read about it, learn about it, and hear from others about what they did with their personal gift. I believe very strongly that is a road to happiness, and it's also a road to more peace in our world, right? The more fulfilled individuals that we have, the more evolved, the better our world is going to be. So please consider that. And once again, thank you so much for listening. It's been an actual delight, but more than that, Ted, it's been an honor. It really has. And I thank you so much for honoring my show and for honoring our nation. You've really done a terrific job. So, miigwech, we're very grateful, and we look forward to doing this again sometime.
Miigwech.